So you want to scout scope your 9130? Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Ruger 6. Please join me in watching Marshall Zukov right here on YouTube.
Well, the first thing you're going to have to do is take the two pins out. Now this one, the front one, is interesting. This is actually a 1943 Tula 9130, but it also had a set screw on the top. Now, it was machined or ground down so far, there was absolutely no way to get a slot head screwdriver of any size on there to fit it, so I had to end up drilling the screw out. I also removed the spring. I didn't know if it was soldered or not. It's usually a pretty safe bet that when you have a war era 9130, there's usually not a set screw, and there usually is no solder holding it in place, unlike on pre-war 9130s, Dragoon rifles, M91s, or the variants. Typically they do. Then once the pins have been removed, it may take a little persuasion with a punch of some kind. The brass punches are good because they're usually not going to wreck any of the metal. And then the rear sight, the whole rear sight base slides off forward towards the muzzle. This one just happens to slide really easy until it gets almost to the end. It just pulls right off. That's the first step in scout scoping your 9130. The next thing you're going to need to do is obtain some scope rings and a long eye relief scope. This one just happens to be an AIM brand scope. In my opinion, it appears to be an exact replica of the NC Star scopes. They're not very expensive. They can be found on the internet. The one thing that is critical, though, depending on what your setup is, for example, this one has one of the ATI stocks on it. I wouldn't really recommend it just because the one that I got, and it may not be true with all, but the one that I got, I had to spend hours with a Dremel tool going in there making room so the rifle would function. The interrupter and interrupter spring travel was impeded by the side of the stock. However, you're going to need some 22 high-rise scope rings. Now they need to be high-rise. A handguard will fit under here if you leave it in the original stock, but you also need high-rise so you can clear the barrel shank and receiver. We've got plenty of clearance there. This is actually the second rifle this scope has been on, and this is the second rifle this stock has been on. I believe Boyd's also makes some nice Mosin Nagant wood stocks, Monte Carlo style. They look very nice. I don't think they come finished. That's up to the person that buys it to put their own finish on it. But the diameter of the base where the rear sight would slide onto is not very wide. That's why you must have 22 scope rings. There are other mounts that can be used. I'll try to provide some links to some other mounts that could also work. In addition, with this type of scope on there, since it mounts so low to the axis of the bore, you're going to need to remove the front sight. That is easy as well. You just simply take a brass punch and punch it off to one side or the other. So this is something that you're going to be looking for when you do it. You just take your hammer and just tap it on out. Just like that. Piece of cake. This rifle just happens to be an ex-sniper. On Tula rifles, the way you can tell, it's kind of hard to see here. Looks like a couple times the C was stamped. Maybe it was rolled or stamped and didn't get stamped very well. And the H. Those are Russian characters from the Cyrillic alphabet, representing S and N in Russian. And we can see the box with the slash through it. Some metal parts on this gun have been replaced, refinished, refurbished. And we can see from the outside here, here are the scope mount holes that were welded from the outside and ground smooth. And we can get a shot right there, and we can see the holes plugged from the inside of the receiver wall. That is how you can identify a Tula X-Sniper rifle. Same with a Jevsk. It will have the same filled-in mounting holes. However, Ijevsk does not utilize sniper stamps like that. You should find right here above the stock line there will be a serial number. It could be X'd out, it could be lined out, or it could be untouched. But if there's a number here, typically on an Ijevsk rifle that has filled-in scope holes, that's how you identify the Ijevsk X Sniper. There are some that have numbers stamped here on the receiver, not on the barrel shank, but on the receiver. Those are older import marks and stamps of serial numbers. Occasionally, for example, this would be an easy one to translate. The Russian sounds of these letters, what appears to be a B here is actually a V sound, and this E makes a Y sound. So, if it was translated, it would be VE probably, and whatever number would be. In this case, it could be 22 if it were an older import. It looks like we've got a real nice tight fit here on the groove with the mount of the scope. These mount screws have been tightened up very firm. Looks like it's going to hold quite well. Touchdown Seahawks, alright. So you just want to make sure you check it out. Everything looks like it's making a good grip on there and is going to stay. So there's just a quick how-to on scout scoping your 9130. Now, this is not a permanent modification. The scope can be removed, the rear sight can be replaced, and it can be placed back in the original stock. It could be sold as a CNR firearm, as at that point nothing is modified. Although this is temporary, it is a modification. If you did try to sell this rifle in this configuration, it would have to go through a dealer FFL. And if you have a 9130 or an extra Dragoon, I don't recommend making any permanent modifications, drilling and tapping the receiver. There are some people that will buy X-Sniper rifles and re-sniper them, kind of similar to like what our guns does. However, permanent modifications, I've never made one to any of mine as far as cutting barrel, drilling and tapping, anything like that. I suppose one could argue stock refinishing. I guess supposedly that is a permanent modification, but with Big 5 Mosins or Cabela's, Dunham's, wherever the $100 Mosins are out the door, those are usually going to be Arsenal refurbs coming in from the Ukraine, and they're not as highly collectible. A lot of them have nice bores and will make great shooters, so it's an excellent opportunity for a very cheap modification. You've got yourself a hunting rifle for under 200 bucks easy, probably about 150, 175 bucks. Scope mount scope rifle, probably closer to 200 depending on what kind of stock you buy. But for now, Marshal Zhukov signing out on this Mosin Nagant Scout Scoping. And soon, hopefully, I will go over, I suppose we could do a bolt disassembly video. Bolts are pretty easy to take apart. But we can also address polishing the bolt. And that really will help make things nice and smooth.